The Committee of the Whole is called in session. And the first thing we have on the agenda this evening is the budget adjustments follow-up.
Thank you,
Jan.
Councilmember Person. Tonight, we have the follow-up, as you said, for the mid-biennium budget update. The update is, there's several purposes: to update revenue projections with changed conditions, to make housekeeping adjustment to incorporate prior council actions, and to make adjustments for unexpected cost and proposed departmental changes. In order to enact the mid-biennium update, the council will need to ultimately adopt the property tax levy for 2020, adopt those budget amendments, and update the fee schedule. Tonight at the regular meeting of council, you will have the second and final public hearing, and that is the Committee of the Whole session now gives us the opportunity to follow up with any questions you might have, to give you an opportunity to deliberate further, and to finalize your committee report.
Okay, does anybody have any follow-up questions? Okay, I don't see any. I do have a committee report that I will sign if it's okay with everybody, going over what we went through at the last presentation. Okay?
Happy with that.
Thank you.
Oh,
That was quick.
you're welcome.
Now we have the police chief, or whoever his designee is.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members. Thank you. I'm not sure if this is good or bad, but my report is short.
I don't know.
This is in regards to the racing emphasis patrols, the drag racing that's going on in Renton. If you remember, we started back in May of 2018, starting emphasis patrols where we're actually blocking off Oakesdale and parts of 34th and 34th and 16th and 27th, I believe it was, to stop the illegal street racing that was going on. We've been doing it since then, except for on the inclement weather nights, Fridays and Saturdays, we've stopped. But as far as racing in Renton, we just don't see it. There's no more racing there. That's not to say you can't hear it. On 167 with the mufflers and everything else, you can still hear people coming in. And Kent, right across the street, when you look from our vantage point across Southwest 43rd, there's a 76 station and a Chevron that still have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cars that fill those lots. So we have some pictures that I can share from across the street, but it's just a gas station that has hundreds of cars that park in it. They'll still go and visit our 7-Eleven that's right there off of Oakesdale and Southwest 43rd. And, you know, that's a business owner's decision on whether or not they would like to have that kind of activity. But there's no racing. It's just a lot of traffic down there. And they'll come in off of, they'll take 167, take the exit right there on 43rd to come around and hang out at the gas stations before they move to the other agencies. But we have not had any racing or had to take any enforcement action for racing since we started those extra patrols.
Ruth?
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
So I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like one corner is Renton and the other corner is Kent.
Correct.
And it is kind of concerning because even though you say it's not in Renton, we turn right there, and the one block from there is again Renton. So it is really crowded, and there's a lot of cars going in. Are we working with Kent? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. We do work with Kent, State Patrol, and some of the other agencies to do sometimes some emphasis patrols. I know Kent doesn't have the same amount of staffing currently like what we're doing with shutting down the streets. I know they've worked with those business owners to see if they can't do trespasses and some warnings to clear out their lots. But again, it was up to the business owners that chose not to enforce those things. So it is a collection point, but we do continue to work with State Patrol, Kent. When the task force happens, we'll work with Tukwila, everybody that's affected, Auburn, and everybody. So that happens occasionally, a couple times throughout the summer.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yeah.
I do want to say congratulations. That was a great idea the police department put forward for managing that with the closure of the street. And I'm delighted to hear that it's working. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Bruce?
A follow-up question.
Sure.
How about the calls? Have been decreased? Do we have less calls about residents complaining about the noise, or?
We still get some. When I'm staying up just above Valley Medical, I can still hear it from the 167. So we will get a few calls, not as many. We get a lot of people that actually recognize it's not occurring in Renton. Before it would happen in Southwest 10th area where the vehicle or the emissions testing, those roads used to be occupied quite a bit. So our patrol units patrol that. So since we've kind of removed all of that, we don't get nearly as many, but occasionally we'll get some that's usually them coming off of 167, coming under Rainier or something like that. But
Thank you.
definitely lower.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess my question goes to to the exhaust, because most of these cars are being re-outfitted with the loud exhaust. And I've been given two different answers over the course. One is just the act of changing the exhaust system from the approved from the factory for emissions, and that is it makes it illegal. And I've been told, we should be able to enforce that. But then the other one is that because of the noise, if we try and do it under the noise ordinance, would have to have the highly sophisticated setup of a noise meter.
Correct.
So,
Yeah, and usually what we'll hear, when you hear a modified exhaust is what it's titled under, having a modified exhaust is a penalty. And we do have officers that have written that, and I can actually go back and look to see what the process went. But I think if we cite them for a modified exhaust and they change that by the time they go to court, that's something that that can be taken into consideration as far as the ticket. But we are able to listen and look at what appears to be a modified exhaust. Usually a picture's attached, and they can provide a citation for that.
okay. And any other questions? Okay.
No, I'm okay.
No?
I'm okay.
Just wait. The wave gets you unasked, Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Now we'll have Parks and Recreation Natural Areas Plan update.
Great. Thank you, Council President Person and council members, for the opportunity to provide a briefing on the updated Parks, Recreation, and Natural Areas Plan. I'm Erica Schmitz. I'm a capital project coordinator, and I'm the lead on this project. The team also includes Leslie Betlock, the Parks Planning and Parks Planning and Natural Resources Director, as well as two of our colleagues from CED, Angie Mathias and Katie Bucco-Morales. This plan is a guidebook of priorities for the next 20 years. It's a companion plan to the Bicycle and Trail Master Plan and Downtown Civic Core Vision and Action Plan. It implements the comprehensive plan and informs individual community plans. Having a current adoptive plan is critical to applying for and receiving grant funding. $8.7 million in grants and state direct legislative appropriations have been secured for projects that were identified in the 2011 plan. Since the last briefing, we've completed the second phase of inclusive engagement. The third open house and online open house. The project list and cost model were developed and reviewed. We're now preparing the draft plan for public comment and the SEPA environmental review. The updated plan will be brought to council for consideration of adoption in late January. A variety of outreach and engagement opportunities have been used to gather input from over 1,800 community members. It's a substantial increase over the 1,535 that we had in 2011. Outreach has been conducted in English, Spanish, and Vietnamese, and we've had interpretation and translated materials available throughout the process. The third briefing you received provided community survey results indicating community feedback and priorities, and also reviewed the 10-minute walk access analysis to determine park access gaps, which would be the white areas on this map. Updated Renton data will feed into the National Trust for Public Land ParkServe database. This plan piloted a new approach to inclusive engagement, partnering with members of the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force. The goal of inclusive engagement effort was to hear from communities previously underrepresented in public outreach by meeting people where they already are, with informal small meetings in familiar settings with known and trusted facilitators. And we are meeting with the Inclusion Task Force to review the results, successes, and any room for improvement in the pilot outreach effort. Our consultants, inclusive engagement specialists, provided a training and toolkit to those members of the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force who chose to participate. The conversation leaders held community conversations about key elements of the plan update with exercises to gather feedback on priorities. Events were one of the items we asked about. Participants supported all 4 types of city-sponsored events, but had the most interest in citywide events and culture and arts events. And then in the discussions, participants mentioned their interest in bringing the community together through events, and specifically the value of neighborhood events in providing occasions for neighbors to connect and build relationships. Another exercise was where the participants were asked to allocate a $10 budget amongst the categories shown or their own categories, and then they discussed those allocations with the group. Improving parks and acquiring new land received the highest average budgets. The discussions emphasized interest in closing trail gaps and providing year-round recreation facilities, particularly indoor facilities and all-weather fields. Thank you so much to those council members for helping get the word out about Open House number 3 and the online open house. We really appreciate that, as well as those of you who attended. The third open house gathered community input to inform key plan components, including the prioritized project list and park concept plans. Members of the public weighed in on the criteria used to prioritize projects identified in the plan. All of them rated as important, but enhancing existing facilities and filling identified gaps were the most important. Participants also evaluated possible park features, which we then incorporated into improvement projects and the park concept plans. What we've learned from the outreach efforts and the data analysis informs the plan recommendations. So these are the overall recommendations. There's also specific objectives under each recommendation. I'll just call your attention to reinvest in Renton's community assets. That's a new recommendation in this plan that was driven by community input. We also have a couple of new objectives, developing undeveloped parks in access gap areas and developing a renovation and refurbishment plan to prioritize major maintenance. Objectives under these recommendations include conducting an inventory of the natural areas to inform management decisions, implementing a consistent system of wayfinding throughout the city, and developing a sports field complex to meet the demand and need to support tournament play. Each planning area has individualized recommendations, and we have an example shown here for each. The recommendations respond to the particular needs and opportunities of each unique community planning area. The recommendations focus on providing recreation opportunities in gap areas as well as capitalizing on existing assets. The Fairwood planning area doesn't have a recommendation as it's currently outside city limits. And I'll now hand it over to Leslie, who's going to cover the project list and cost model.
Thank you, Erica. 7 criteria were utilized to develop the project list, and cost was not a factor at this point in the development of prioritizing projects, but later in the process. The 7 criteria included advancing programming objectives, fulfilling multiple planning objectives, such as does the project occur in multiple plans, identify gaps in service, enhancing partnerships and volunteerism, enhancing or improving use of existing facilities, contributing to system sustainability, and that could be financially, environmentally, or longevity, and strengthening identity. The design guidelines for all parks were included, and that includes neighborhood parks, community, regional, and special use parks, as well as natural areas and corridors. And the design guidelines lay out the park's intent, the size of the park and access, recommended resources, and additional resources to fulfill the park needs. A new tool, the Natural Areas Evaluation Tool, was also utilized to help prioritize projects, inventorying, stabilizing, improving, and restoring the city's natural areas. 9 general categories have been identified that inform programming for the Recreation and Neighborhoods Division. Ranking helps to focus city efforts and is based on public feedback, current trends, and market conditions. Recreation program projects were prioritized separately from the capital improvement projects. This is the first year recreation program projects have been prioritized. Some of the priorities have tied scores. And I'd like to highlight the strategic plan and cost model, which is currently being developed. The strategic plan helps the division achieve its vision and long-term goals to provide relevant programming into the future with a priority on managing resources responsibly. The city's business plan helps to guide the strategic plan. Adaptive recreation provides programming opportunities for youth and adults with emotional, physical, and sensory needs. Examples can include social engagement, life enrichment, and athletic program opportunities. For outdoor recreation, the park system provides the framework for people to engage in and with the parks, independently or through programming. Examples can include walking, hiking, running, and or facilitating outdoor exercise, or perhaps even art in the park. 73 projects comprise the prioritized capital projects list. This prioritized list is a snapshot of 2019 conditions. Ranking helps to focus city efforts and also helps to inform the 6-year capital improvement program. There's a wide range of potential projects, and as a 20-year plan, the implementation of these projects will be spread out over many years. As noted earlier, there are 73 total projects. The next few slides focus on the top 10 projects, and due to ties in scoring, there are 24 projects included in the top 10. Project prioritization is required for plan certification by the state and assists with grant funding. Scoring was based on community demand and needs throughout the public engagement process. A total score of 35 points was possible for each project. Scoring was completed prior to the development of project costs and funding options, and community members weighed in on the prioritization criteria at open house number 3 and the online open house. Capital projects can be sorted based on total score, park type, or community planning area to be more competitive in the grant application process. Identified projects include all park categories: neighborhood, community, regional, special use parks, natural areas, and corridors. The public will again have the opportunity to comment on the entire project list and plan as part of the SEPA process. Feedback will be incorporated prior to plan adoption. And if you would like, we can provide you more detailed information related to each project. The capital and operations cost model was developed in the 2011 plan, and we are bringing this tool forward for this plan. It has been used to develop the 6-year CIP and inform the Parks, Trails, and Community Facilities Initiative for issuance of the $14.5 million bond package. The tool estimates both the one-time capital costs and ongoing operations and maintenance costs. The tool allows broad planning level costs to be identified based upon improvements recommended in the plan, and the model is flexible. Improvements and cost assumptions can be modified to adjust for changed project decisions or refined cost figures. Operation costs are modeled on a per-acre basis utilizing rent-in costs. Facilities that require additional maintenance or staffing, such as sports field, include operating costs allocations on a per-unit or bonus basis. For recreation buildings, staffing, facility support, and utility costs are included. Special facilities, such as the Henry Moses Aquatic Center, adds recreation staffing to the total as other operations costs. And we applied that same model to swimming beaches, where Kennydale Beach Park and Coulomb Park have guarded swimming beaches during the summer months. The above prioritized project totals are a summary of both the one-time capital costs and ongoing operations and maintenance costs. A reminder that the above figures focus on the 24 projects which comprise the top 10 prioritized projects. This format provides a snapshot of capital and operation costs over time. The model includes projected capital costs for 5, 10, and 20-year increments and utilizes a 5% annual inflation factor. This slide reflects a summary of project costs by park type for all 73 projects. The percentage of investments by park category is reflective of community feedback, with higher emphasis on neighborhood parks. Ten concept plans were completed for the 2011 plan. We are bringing forward the 6 as identified in this slide to this plan. We're adding 2 new concepts and updating 2 existing concepts. The 2 new concepts will be replacing 2 projects that are currently underway and were developed as part of the 2011 plan. The Family First Community Center, a 4-way partnership project in the Benson Community Planning Area, will be replacing the Benson Community Park concept plan. The second concept plan, the Sunset Neighborhood Park, is estimated for completion in the summer of 2020. The 2011 adopted plan helped to secure $5.4 million in grant and state direct legislative appropriations for this $8.9 million project. Concept plans are included in all planning areas with the exception of Fairwood, as the planning area is located outside the Renton city limits, and the West Hill planning area, where there's very limited land located within the Renton city limits. May Creek Park is an update to an existing 2011 concept plan. All concept plans were presented at Open House 3 and the online Open House. Revisions to the concepts were made based on public feedback. The original grant-funded 10-acre park was acquired in 1993. This updated concept reflects 2 donations, here and here, since the 2011 plan totaling 6.8 acres, in addition to a trail easement located here. Improvements include a potential area for expansion, a trailhead and play area, as well as a Creek View Loop Trail. This is part of the long-term plan to connect the May Creek Trail extending from Lake Washington and Renton to King County's regional Cougar Mountain Wildland Park. This concept is new and also an update to the 2006 adopted Tri-Park concept plan that was developed with the Washington State Department of Transportation. This plan focuses particularly on Liberty Park, Cedar River Park, and the Narco property, and what can be accomplished assuming WashDOT does not acquire and develop the Merlino property into ball fields. Liberty Park includes reimagining the existing community building as an environmental education center focusing on salmon, the Cedar River, and partnerships such as the STREAM program. Active multi-use fields are consolidated at the Narco property, and an off-leash area is relocated to Liberty Park. Cedar River Park includes expansion of the Henry Moses Aquatic Center and refocuses the outdoor experience to the water, including an amphitheater and salmon-themed play area. Consolidating multi-use sports field development for improved and increased programming is highlighted for the Narco property. Soft surface trails and the natural areas as desired by the public are also included. These 3 parks are central to the community. The Narco Park project was identified as priority number 1. The Cedar River Park project was identified as priority number 2, and the Liberty Park project is identified as priority number 5. This is an update to an existing concept. Cascade Park was annexed into the city in 2008, as you may recall, while Tiffany Park was already in Renton's inventory. The 2011 plan identified acquiring property to connect the 2 parks, located here, and expand Cascade Park to increase visibility into the park. The city acquired 5.2 acres with a $112,000 grant. Design features for this concept include constructing a nature trail to connect the two parks, located here, and formalizing trail easements along the Cascade Waterline and the Seattle Waterline right-of-ways, which is also identified in the Benson Community Plan, and identify potential future acquisitions to improve visibility and connectivity into Cascade Park. Lastly, daylighting the Tightline Stream in Tiffany Park is a recommendation, and programming the building that exists in the park for environmental learning. There's great partnership opportunities with the school district, as Tiffany Park Elementary is adjacent to this location, and good opportunities for future open space grant funding as well. Windsor Hills Park is a new concept plan, and it reimagines a slightly secluded existing 4.6-acre neighborhood park. The concept identifies locations for potential expansion to increase visibility into the park, and open sightlines at the Edmonds Avenue entrance, which currently exists. Hillside topography is used to develop upper and lower play areas connected via hillside slides. Off-leash area, which is highly desired by the public, is included in this concept, as well as a dog agility course. Canopy cover is maintained throughout the plan. The public will have the opportunity for formal review and comment starting at the end of this month, officially starting November 29th. And the plan will be revised based on public comments received, along with input from the Planning Commission, Parks Commission, and the Council Planning and Development Committee. Upon adoption, the plan will be submitted to the State Recreation and Conservation Office for certification, and Renton will be eligible for grants for the following 6 years. Thank you for your time this evening. We'd be glad to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Any questions? Seeing none?
Actually,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. I do have one question.
Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So I was able to go to a couple of the open houses, and the one question that I kept hearing over and over again was the request for more ball fields. Can you speak to that a little bit, just because I'm sure there's people that are interested in it?
The request for ball fields actually has shown up in all areas of the public engagement process, the open house meetings, the online open house, the statistically valid survey, and the best opportunity for consolidated ball fields and soccer fields with lighting and synthetic turf would be at the Narco property. And there's just a huge desire for that. Renton is probably one of the few remaining communities that does not have a ball field complex with synthetic turf and lights.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Now, seeing none?
Do you have a question? No?
No? Okay.
That was it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The committee is over.